Welcome one and all to the kickoff gathering. And I am going to say that I just personally love a meeting, a conference of professional development that fills both my brain and my heart. And it's really our hope today that we bring you both of those things. I am a former middle school teacher. I talk really fast. And we do know that we have a lot of content that we want to cover. So the pace is going to be quick, but we're going to record it and share it back out with you. We have great notes. We have an amazing team of leaders working with all of our regions and schools. So we want you to know that if it goes by a little too quick right now, there'll be lots of opportunity to catch up and to get more information and really stay in touch with us always if there's anything we can do to help. So welcome to this event. I'm going to pass it over to Beth to introduce herself and we'll get things started.
Hello,
oh, wait.
everyone.
That's right. Yes, Beth, go.
Is that okay? Yes, it's me. I wanted to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Also wanted to mention that I have had a little accident a couple days ago, so please don't mind. I am fine. I just tried to teach my daughter how to ride a skateboard and ended up face planting in the street. So just healing from that. So don't mind, I'm totally fine. But yeah, so we're excited to have you. And Jim, do you want to take it back and run through?
You bet. So we want to acknowledge everybody here today. If you have a chance to hover over the participants button, you can rename your title there. If you want to throw in your region, that would be great so people can see who you are and where you're from. Would you all take a second to type your name in and to put down your region and tell us what you do, what school you're located at, if you're in an ESD or a consortium, and just do a little quick virtual introduction over the chat, that'd be great. While you're doing that, I want to acknowledge and send a huge thank you out to our pilot project coordinators from your regions. So we have somebody from every region today. Brooke Rich from High Desert is the coordinator, Debbie Johnson from MWEC, Beth Molenkamp from PacTech, Gina Castro-Brandt from South Coast, and Carla Clark from Southern Oregon. And those five are all working with a wonderful team of co-coordinators and team leads at the schools. So we want to say thank you to all of you. And we appreciate the amazing efforts that have already gone into this project. So looking forward to what's to come. So as you have a chance, go ahead and open the chat up and take a look at where everybody is from. Linda's got, I think, the biggest population in her room. So glad to see you all there. Hello, team. And Beth is going to take us quickly through some kind of the nuts and bolts of our gathering today.
Sure. Jim, do you want to move a couple slides forward?
I would be happy to.
We have a slide that was just recognizing all the regions. And then the next slide after that is going to be the nuts and bolts. So just wanted to talk to you about what some of those are today. So Jim mentioned we're going to be recording our gathering for those that couldn't be here with us, but also if you wanted to re-review what was covered. Jim mentioned we might move through some parts a little bit faster, but I really want you to take away the information with you or have that you can refer back to. Also, we've automatically muted everyone just to limit some of those audio feedback and echo. But you can go ahead and familiarize yourself with the mute button. Feel free to unmute when you'd like to speak. And then we would love to see your faces and for you to see each other. So please just keep your webcams on if you're able to and feel comfortable with that. And you can adjust your name. As Jim mentioned, we would just like to be able to put your name to your face. And then also, for any reason, if you need to take a break, please do so. We just ask that you turn off your camera so that it will avoid some distractions for others that are on this call. And then last, we're going to use Padlet today. If you're familiar with that, that's fantastic. If you're not, it's a great tool to use. And this is going to help us capture responses, any questions that you have or comments on different topics that we'll cover. And then we'll also, in just a little bit, put the link in the chat. We didn't want to do that yet because we didn't want to kind of take away from things. So when we get to that part, we'll put that in the chat for you. And then also about Padlet is that we want you to leave it open throughout our presentation or information today, just so that you can continue to refer back to it, add to it, and put those thoughts and comments in there at different points. So Jim, handing it back over to you.
Thank you. Some of your presenters today. Anybody know how to move this thing off the bottom of my screen? Shoot me a text. Who knows? It suddenly took over my screen. We're going to ask everybody that presents today to do that right before their section. And super excited to invite and welcome Amy and Alex from YouScience with us today, because that's where a great deal of our learning is going to take place. Today's learning objectives, like a good classroom, We're really wanting us to walk away to understand our collective purpose and outcomes for the pilot project. And really, this is a conversation starter because those are going to change and grow as we're all working together. We want to identify ways to center equity and access through intentional conversation and action, including the use of data, which is going to be one of our highlighted conversation points today. And we're going to learn how to begin using the YouScience and the Oregon Open Learning platforms as our resource hubs for gathering and sharing information with one another.
All
Beth?
right. Yeah, so we have some community agreements. And before I go into those, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm so sorry. So I'm Beth Wiggum. I work at the Oregon Department of Education. My position supports career and college readiness, as well as comprehensive school counseling programs. And those are pre-K through post-secondary. And then I also work district and school level to support implementation and continuous improvement of those. And so I work closely with Jim and ODE and as a part of leading, helping to lead this pilot project. So that's a little bit about who I am. So community agreements. So we created some community agreements just to help kind of guide our conversations today. So we're going to ground in and speak from our own personal, local, and immediate life experience. And we know everyone here has a wealth of experience, and we just feel like you will really be able to add perspective and depth to the conversations and discussions that we'll have. So please do that. Also, we're going to honor and hold space for each other. So take space, make space as you need it. Please let us listen and learn from each other. And then we're going to acknowledge and hold space that there may be some discomfort in topics or discussions that we have that may be difficult or challenging. So just want to acknowledge that up front. And then we want you to practice self-care. So please look after yourself, whether that's emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever you need. Please take that time as we move through our time together today. So thank you.
All right, Beth is going to put the Padlet link into the chat, if she could do that. Would you wave at me if you've used Padlet before for hands? Okay, folks are familiar with it. So you might be signed in already. We're going to kind of take a little bit slower minute right here. And if you could, I need to exit out of this, open up the Padlet. You're going to find this awaiting you, the Padlet. And we're going to be centered on our first column here, and then we're going to be moving into columns 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as the time together progresses. As you enter your sign in, something short and sweet, just a name and initial would be great. The reason to do that would help us with attempts to communicate with you if there's a extraordinary idea that comes up or a concern or a question that we want to address. It'd be nice to know who it came from. So if you want to stay in the anonymous mode, that's fine. Maybe you could throw initials down or your name in the comment box. And so in terms of working this, it pops up that I'm James Taylor. I can title my comment, or I can use that title box to put my whole comment in. And then as soon as you click off, so I'm going to write test comment here. As soon as I click somewhere else on the screen, it will post that comment onto the screen. Now, anybody else that reads my comment can add a comment to it. And later on in our conversation, you'll be able to rate some of the conversations that are taking place and prioritize some of the things that we're discussing. So that is an opportunity for you to get information quickly in for us to communicate back and forth with one another. The Padlet. Can I stop and take a look? And if anybody needs to unmute or put in the chat if you have any questions, concerns about using the Padlet or signing up for it. Looking for hands. Okay, don't see any hands, don't see any chat questions, right? Okay, Beth.
Great, glad you all were able to get in. So what we're going to do at this moment is we're going to create a vision of success for the pilot project. So you may have been given a lot of information. You may not have any information or pieces about the pilot project, but what we want you to do is think about what you wish for students. So think for a moment, what would this pilot project, so our work together, what would it look like, sound like, feel like if every student had the information, resources, support, and experiences that they needed to make informed decisions about their future? So think about that for a moment. And as you start to formulate what that would look like, sound like, feel like. We want you to put in Padlet in that first column your response. And we want you to be clear and specific of what that vision would look like for students. And Jim, if you wanted to share your screen for Padlet, we can start to see maybe just a really quickly, like some of the things that are popping up on there as people are. You guys can also scroll and see the types of things that people, that each other are putting on there.
Some great responses already. Motivation, awareness, focus, learning about non-traditional careers, spilling beyond the favorite class and connecting in multiple contents.
Great.
They're prepared for high school opportunities.
Excellent, thank you. Keep adding to that. We're going to come back to this, but we want to capture what that vision would look like. So we know that students need different pieces of data or information about themselves as they progress on their career exploration journey. So we know that that happens over time. And we know that they need access to resources to explore careers more in depth and guidance from adults on what all that means. And we also know that they need help on figuring out how to get to where they want to go and ways to navigate the barriers and transitions that they're going to face. We also know that they need high quality experiences to inform their decisions about careers that would make a good fit based on what they know about themselves. So how do we provide all of this in a systematic way that ensures that every student gets what they need? This is actually what we're going to start to explore now. So I'm going to hand it over to Jim and we're going to start to dive in.
So we at ODE, in building out the application, established a set of purposes and outcomes for the pilot project. I'm not going to read them to you. I don't want you to take any notes. Beth is going to put into the chat a link to a one-pager, which will take you to a Google Doc that's open for everybody to view. And it's going to give you this list of purposes and outcomes that was found in the application. And we want to share this all the way across the whole spectrum of everybody that's involved with the kids so you can see how this was all built out. Now, your pilot project coordinators and your team leaders gathered together and submitted narratives in the application process. And we went through and pulled the highlighted and repeated outcomes and goals that were found in all the narratives. So we're putting that up there. This is for you to spend some time on at a later time to kind of create some correlation between the work and the outcomes and to help continue to build that vision. Great conversation starters, we hope. And some of you will see your items in there, maybe in a different wording because it was found to be similar to something from another region. So these are the highlights that we would like to share with all of you on the outcomes that came from you in your narratives from the application. And recognize that some of the big things to change systems are in here, especially around equity and around creating partnerships with our business and industry partners to help support all this work. So that is there for you as a resource, and your coordinators and team leads will all have access to this in their resource files as well. So please wave or holler or throw in the chat if you need that link or anything's not connecting or you're not able to access it. So we are going to look one more time at the Padlet if we could. And I'm going to point out the next set of columns, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. So we're about to move into some time with YouScience. And before we do so, we want you to have an opportunity to throw questions in and really know that they're captured, and also to share some of the things that are happening in your areas. So column 2, what are some things that are currently occurring that provide opportunity for career exploration awareness in your area? Okay, from all of your lenses, from even as a parent, an aunt and uncle, a grandparent, as somebody in your community, in your church, or in a civic organization, what's the lens you can share? What's going on in your community? What are some gaps that exist in providing career exploration awareness? This fourth column, what are some intentional and innovative ways and activities and opportunities that we can develop around a student's aptitude? So as you start to hear Amy and Alex share out with you, and you suddenly have an inspiration and a thought, here's a great place to capture that note and let us all have access to your thoughts and sharings. And then do you have questions that pop up? Oh, come on, ODE, I need to know this, or YouScience, I want to know this. Maybe that's readily available already. We can point you to it. And if it's not, we want to come up with that answer. And then finally, this is a long-term project. And so this edge over here, if you don't get to it, not a problem. But we are going to build a supportive handbook, virtual and physical, that will answer frequently asked questions for folks that are engaged in this process, all the way from the student and the parent to the person who's guiding and mentoring them in the school setting, to the community member who's engaged, to the business and industry partner, to the educator, administrator, and to our coordinators and the like who might come into this project later on down the road. So what frequently asked question might you want answered or present in a handbook and a guidebook of that nature? So it's already filling up. I love it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And so next, it's about YouScience. So we're going to pass it over to Amy and Alex. I'm going to stop sharing, and Amy's going to take over the screen here.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Bradley with YouScience. One moment. Let me take over the screen. There we go. Can I get a thumbs up that you can see an island?
We got it.
To start. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And let me minimize one other piece. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is Amy Bradley with YouScience. I'm Regional Director working with schools in Oregon. My screen went blank, but hopefully now you can see my slides. Jim, did that work from your end?
We see it. Yes, we do. Yep.
Perfect. So what I'm going to start with today is a little bit, just a quick overview of YouScience, everything that we do, and then we will focus in on snapshot. I will walk you through results, what it looks like for a student, and then I will pass it off to Alex Pastina, who's one of our customer success managers, and she is going to get more into nuts and bolts with you about your administrative portal as well as reporting features. So on your screen to start is basically the full vision of YouScience. We start here so that you guys just are aware that we do have a lot of products. If you look on this left side, the aptitude-based guidance is really what we will be focused in on during our time, as well as the academic advising. But the full vision of YouScience starts with that aptitude-based guidance, really uncovering the talent, that raw talent of that young person, then using that to better guide and align toward academic and career programs. And then from there, because they're being aligned into great fits for academic and career programs, receiving the right certifications as well. And all of those pieces we use for once they hit high school and beyond, we use toward matching them into the local talent marketplace. So we have an opportunities tab coming for our high school and older students. YouScience, by the way, is used by everyone from 7th grade through adults. So we will talk about YouScience Snapshot, which is for 7th and 8th grade, and that's what we will be piloting with you guys. We also have a high school version called the Summit, and that version actually not only is for high school, but also for college through adults as well. So Talent Marketplace will be rolling out in that version, but also YouScience is used toward better advising and recruiting toward post-secondary as well. So that's the full vision, but as I mentioned, we're going to kind of stay on the two green dots that you see, the aptitude-based guidance and the academic advising. But a little quick background on YouScience and the reason that we want to partner with you guys, and it really is to solve for a larger problem in our country, which is this widening skills gap that you see in the middle of your screen. We know that throughout our country, we're actually graduating more students than ever, and then there's a drop off. You can really see that. Now, these are pre-COVID numbers, but you could see it at that point when you looked at students that received that 4-year college degree. Almost half of them were actually doing jobs that did not require a 4-year degree. And then we also work with chambers, business, industry, and those 6 million jobs that went unfulfilled. The feedback that we received is it was really hard to connect with the talent of the young people, hard to connect with them. So we want to partner with you guys to start back in middle school. We know that the talent exists, and we want to kind of change how we have the discussions around that. So we want to move away from only using academic measures as a proxy for talent. And this is just how education has evolved, especially when you look at higher grade levels when we're looking at GPAs, ACT, SAT as a proxy for talent, well, that's great for the top 10%, but it doesn't actually showcase the talent of every student. And you guys know this, working in education, every student has talent. We all have talent. That's the heart of what we really get to with YouScience, and we need them. Our country and our economy needs every one of them working and living productive lives. So from that, when creating YouScience, since the 1970s, everything in the market that we've used when it comes to guiding students and guiding that talent has basically been self-reported, meaning if you look at the misalignment of talent on your screen, basically interest surveys of some kind have been used since the 1970s, where students just answer questions about what they think they're good at doing, what they think they might be interested in pursuing. But you guys know that when answering those questions, it is very limited. Your experience and that lens of that young person, or even an adult, by the way, it depends on where you live in our country. It depends on what you've seen, what you've been exposed to, and then you can see the disconnect. So maybe there's interest, but yet the ability isn't there. So we want to move past only using interest and personality surveys, which is what is built into every platform in the market until YouScience. So if you throw a platform at me that's been used in a school or even at a college level, just know as you look at them, they basically typically are interest or personality surveys. Students just answer questions. So we move beyond that in bringing in measures of aptitudes. So for students, when they take YouScience, it's kind of like playing brain games, but they're actually taking psychometrically valid aptitude exercises when they take YouScience. So a couple of pieces behind that, just to share a little bit of validity. If you want a lot of this, we have a lot of this documented and researched. We can always send you a link if you want to read more than what I'm sharing this afternoon with you guys. But the first piece I'd love to share is BAB on your screen. That is an acronym. It stands for the Ball Aptitude Battery. It actually comes from the Ball Foundation, and that's BALL. The Ball Foundation is a research organization. They're outside of Chicago, Illinois. They have been researching aptitudes for a little over 50 years. They received their original aptitude exercises actually from a man named Johnson O'Connor. And if you haven't heard of Johnson O'Connor, he is the founder and guru of aptitudes. His research has been out there for about 100 years. So the Ball Foundation actually had a personal connection to Johnson O'Connor, started researching aptitudes a little over 50 years ago. So we worked with the Ball Foundation to digitize their exercises. So to take something like YouScience, prior to this, you would have had to go into a room for a few days with a pen and paper. Some of you might have done this in the past. There were times, I think, where actually aptitude batteries were brought into schools. They still are somewhat with the military as well. But what we did, we worked with Ball Foundation to digitize the exercises so that it is accessible to millions of students, no matter where they live in our country, no matter if they're in rural areas or urban areas, they can have access to this information. So one piece behind the research with Ball Foundation that schools typically like to hear is in their research of these 5 decades, these aptitudes that we measure, they actually remain stable over time. So for your 7th and 8th graders taking YouScience, the aptitudes we are measuring are normed for their age for 7th and 8th graders. Once they hit high school, if you're still working with us, we would love for them to take the version that will last with them from high school beyond. And that one, those aptitudes, we know once they hit around puberty, they remain stable long term. We could norm and validate 5 of them for a little bit younger, but not younger than 7th grade. So the reason behind that is we wanted to give really solid feedback to these young people about this is how you naturally think. Here are your gifts. Now let's use that actual raw talent that you see in yourself that is uncovered to make better decisions about your future. So maybe that is really for choosing what you're selecting in high school, having those better conversations starting back in middle school about career. One other quick piece on this slide, and that is HUMRO. That stands for the Human Resource Research Organization. They are actually based just outside of Washington, D.C. They are a group of psychometricians. You probably have not heard of the group, but you may have heard of what they developed. So they are the group of psychometricians that helped to develop the Department of Labor's ONET. So the ONET is the way our Department of Labor measures all careers in the country. They put them into algorithms. They keep them up to date on a yearly basis. We worked with HUMRO to pull all of that into the YouScience platform. And they actually published a big validity document about YouScience. So if you want to dive deeper, we can send that to you. It's some fun reading, at least for me, but maybe it will be fun for you as well. So that's a little bit about validity behind YouScience, and then a couple of quick proof points beyond that. So early on, we started working with the governor's office in the state of Georgia. We launched in the Atlanta metro first, Atlanta, Georgia. They were actually starting and hired a third party to evaluate every platform in the market that provided guidance for students. They threw us in the mix. Now, we were brand new, guys. We were like a year out, maybe just 2 public schools in the state of Georgia using us, and they threw us in the mix to evaluate us against all platforms, and they landed on us. And the reason I share this is it's really impactful to me from working with young people in the past, and my husband is an educator. We were the only platform that actually showed significant increase when it came to intent to persist toward career, self-awareness, self-empowerment, career exploration, and career decision-making for their young people. So they term that basically giving students relevance, hope, and purpose. They are now in their 4th year of using us in all of their schools in that state. But I love how they really were looking at the social and emotional well-being of their young people as they were diving into what platforms should they be using. So from that, just a couple of fun little data slides for you, and then I'll dive into results. A couple of pieces to share. So this is a huge population. So this is 103,000 represented on this slide. If we had continued using only interest-based, which is what was being used in the state at that time, this is what happens with young people. As I mentioned earlier, they get back what they've seen most in life. So of these 103,000 students, 80% of their top 50 career recommendations, if you just looked at the interest-based recommendations, fell in arts and entertainment, education, social work, life sciences. That's psychology, that's counseling. We actually think it's one of the reasons that, by the way, psychology is a 2nd degree given out in our country. And if you guys know about psychology, you know that that degree will not get them a job in psychology. They'll either have to continue on with more education or get a job maybe in a similar field. But that was actually a question posed to us by the state of Tennessee as well that we work with, was, okay, why is psychology the #1 degree given out in our state? And these numbers, every time we run these numbers for different big groups for states, it is very similar, where interest-based falls in that social and artistic category. But these same students, 54% had high aptitude fit for things that are actually high demand in our country, in Oregon, in the state of Georgia as well, which is where this was run. So on that right side, if you look at the high demand careers, 54% had high demand in these areas or had aptitude fit. So we want to make sure students know and can see that potential even in careers they've never heard of, never considered before. And a little bit of a deeper dive. I won't spend as much time on this slide, but no matter race or gender, the other deep dive behind YouScience, these are those same students, the aptitudes equal out the playing field when it comes to career recommendations. So interest doesn't, so you can look at those interest lines and see how they're different, but yet the aptitudes are really close at 78, 79, 80%, no matter gender or race. So really important to us because we want to uncover a larger diverse workforce, but also showcase the fact that aptitudes are equal and they equal it out when you have recommendations when it comes to aptitude. So how do we do this? Students take basically what they consider brain games, but they're taking psychometrically valid aptitude exercises. So on your screen are a couple of examples of how we measure. Spatial visualization on that left side, that is measuring, do you naturally think in 3D or are you more of a 2D thinker? Can you manipulate things in your mind? That's a piece of paper. It is folded multiple times, hole punched, and you tell the computer where that hole punch will be when the paper is unfolded. And you do that a series of times. It's about a 7-minute exercise. For somebody like me who does not think naturally in 3D, this is a little bit hard. It's challenging as an adult even. B as in boy is the answer. It just takes me a little bit longer than say my daughter who's in high school. This was her favorite exercise. She said she breezed through it. She thought it was really funny, by the way, that I thought it was hard, but it makes sense. Like she does that manipulation. She's creative. She's an artist. It really drew that out in her. So I share that as an example to also let you know that everyone has a unique experience with YouScience, depending on how your brain works. So another way to kind of verbalize what we do. So we are actually measuring how you think. We are not measuring what you know. So very different when it comes to taking YouScience. So the exercises are relatively short. They're 5 to 12 minutes long. They can be broken up. Alex is going to cover a little bit of that with you guys, but let me show you what the students receive. So let me escape from this screen share, and I'm going to swipe over and show you student results live. So on your screen right now, this is what it looks like for a student when they get their results platform link. So it is online for them. You do have access to all of their results. So Alex, who I'll hand it over to in a moment, she will walk you through that piece where you will find your students' results. But for right now, I want to kind of pause here and show you what your students get. So when they get their results, they can explore it in a couple of different ways. They can start with these buttons in the middle, or if you look in your top left corner, there is a little toggle that you can click on and then explore results here. One other piece to note for you guys, if you ever are in a panic about YouScience, let's say something happens, you lose electricity, you have a fire drill, students are taking YouScience, you need a quick answer, use our support feature. It is in that bottom right-hand corner. You can see that's our chat feature. We are available and can help you through chat that way. And then we also have, you can email our support team. We're going to give you all of that information as well, or give them a call. But this is a great place to start if you're ever in a panic and need a quick answer. Start with our chat feature in that bottom right corner of all of our screens, including at youscience.com. So for your students, when they come and start exploring their results, that's exactly what we want them to do, by the way, is just start exploring. There is no interpretation on your part. You do not have to be an expert in aptitudes to be able to walk through results with a student. We have laid it out here really nicely for you guys, for students to explore and you guys to discuss with them. So for this student, Alex, he crushed it. These are his top 2 talents that you see here. He is a numerical detective. He is a sequential thinker. He does not need to know what that means because we're going to explain it right underneath. So underneath on this chart, you're going to see the 5 aptitudes that we measured, but they are based on Alex. So what we do is we give, for instance, he is a sequential thinker. Here is what that means. And so each one of these pie charts represents an aptitude measured. When they click on any of these, they can see what that means and how to apply it. So I just shared with you a moment ago, spatial visualization. So Alex is a 3D visualizer in spatial visualization, so naturally can manipulate things in his mind, able to easily visualize. And then you'll notice in some cases, we will even say, you know, you will have some success. You may find success in biology, physics, design, because you can mentally picture how systems work. So we give them just some positive feedback about how they think. We are all a blend of these aptitudes. And then underneath that, we also give them their top 3 areas of interest. We know this changes in them. We still include interest, even though we know it's subjective, as I was sharing with you guys earlier. But we still ask them what they're interested in doing. That piece they can actually retake. They don't need to retake the aptitude portion, but they could retake the interest, let's say a year later. But for Alex, his top 3 when it comes to interest are investigative, artistic, and realistic. So wants to do some problem solving naturally, be creative, as well as actually work with his hands and do physical activity. All right, so that is the aptitude results page for Alex. Now I'm going to click on careers next. So what you will see when they click on careers is in rank order. Here is how he personally matches to all 16 career clusters in our country. Now, what you'll notice first is you're going to see the aptitude fits. So they can keep loading, by the way, so that they can see all career clusters. If you notice, they get smaller as I go down the screen. So that is like the least fit for the student. Here are the strongest fit at the top when it comes to naturally how he thinks. So each career cluster is represented, as I mentioned earlier, and they can compare it. So this is the aptitude portion, and then he can see how he matches based on his interest as well. And so sometimes you'll find some unicorns, meaning they have both interest and aptitude that are strong fit in the same area. So when they compare it, and that's what you want them to do, is compare aptitude versus interest. For this young person, agriculture and natural resources is both a high aptitude and interest fit. So absolutely, Alex should explore that. And all that he needs to do is click on the icon, and now it will list for him, here are all careers that fall under agriculture and natural resources. So he can scroll through as many as he wishes, but we want him to explore. So I'm going to just click on clinical research coordinator to share this with you guys. So when you click on any of the careers, we give all the basic information that they should, basically want to see to explore at this point. So they can see other titles it's known by. They also can see a day in the life, what you would typically do, as well as core tasks of the job. We also give them projections. So they first see the national projections. So that's what you're seeing underneath the map of the United States, starting average, top salary, growth rate. And then we want them to click on it by state. So obviously have them click on Oregon. What does that projection look like? You guys live in a much better place for this one if you look at that growth rate. While 6.2 doesn't sound super high, the reality is it's still a lot higher than 3.3, which is that national growth rate. So they can compare and obviously see that starting average and top salary as well. And then underneath that, if they keep exploring and keep scrolling down, they're going to see the educational investment. So here are the things that they need to complete in order to pursue a career in this area. So they'll receive on-the-job training, licensing, certification. That would all be listed here as well. And then also typically the industry that hires for this job, where they would actually work. And then at the very bottom of every career, we do list all of the sources that we use pulled into one place for your young people. So as they're exploring in a career, you'll see this big green button that says Save Career. That's absolutely what we want them to do. So let's say they're interested. You'd want them to save the career. They also can save it right here on these career cards just by clicking on the star. And then once they do that, back when you toggle up on the left side at the top, now you can go into their saved careers. So this is what the student has created, their list of saved careers that they might be interested in pursuing. So that is a very brief results of or walkthrough of the results for that student. I'm now going to pass it over to Alex Pastina to talk about nuts and bolts.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Before you do,
yes.
I'm going to ask, we have 2 great questions specifically around what you just shared. So from Carla first, do the explanations of the talents give descriptions specific to each student, or are they a canned response? And are the descriptions of each talent always the same with what is the differentiating piece that the student's 2 strengths are in, if there's some comment around that?
Yes, I'm thinking the question is around the aptitude part. It sounds like that's the case. So for instance, students would receive, so there are 3 different nomenclatures within each aptitude. So within each nomenclature, so all numerical detectives are going to receive this feedback, but it will be different depending on, you know, which nomenclature you fall in. But basically there are 3 different types within each aptitude.
Okay.
So it will be, you know, based on that student.
Okay, and then Brian's is about interests. How much are a student's interests taken into account when it comes to the career areas, or is interest only there for support for others to help them make connections between the interests and what their aptitude test is high in?
Yes, good question. So Brian, that's a really great question. At this level, we keep aptitudes and interests completely separate because they're young. We want to keep them separate. We don't collect as much information when it comes to aptitudes. So we keep them completely separate. So this is just how their brain looks in the world of career, how they match to career cluster based on their aptitudes, and then the interest is completely separate. Now, Brian, you may be familiar with the high school version. In that version, that's for high school through adults, we do blend aptitude and interest into overall fit. So that's a different, you know, obviously a different product. And it's about 50-50, I believe, in that product with aptitude and interest when they're blended together.
Okay.
Could I ask a further question on that, Amy?
Sure. Hi.
I'll make it brief. So many times our kids don't know what they don't know until we tell them. And so I love that the part of suggesting careers based on aptitude, but making the connections between what they know and what they don't know is difficult sometimes. And so that is falls on the shoulders of either parents or teachers or counselors or someone that they may know in the community. Is there a way or some additional support beyond the high school program that YouScience can help the people that are counseling our students to make those connections between interest and careers?
Yes, that's a really great question. We have a lot of resources available to you guys. So we have worksheets, we have lesson plans. So basically to help make those connections, we've created and developed lesson plans and worksheets through the years. And actually, Alex will definitely walk into the resource library for you and show you some of those pieces. That's a really great question and important.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Alex. Now she'll get into some nuts and bolts with you guys of using the YouScience platform as teachers, counselors, administrators.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. Awesome. Well, hopefully everyone can see my screen, this slide deck screen. Let me know if you cannot. But just to reiterate what Amy said, I'm Alex Pastina. I am a customer success manager here with YouScience, and I've been with the company a little over 3 years now. And I actually just absolutely love working with our middle school educators because I was a 7th grade teacher myself. I taught 7th grade language arts, loved it, loved working with middle school students. And I think our tool is powerful for so many different reasons. But one thing that I especially love about it is just the sense of self-confidence and self-efficacy that this information can build in our students, especially those that may not be at the top of the class academically. We do want them to know, what their talents are and what they are awesome at and what they can do with those talents. So really excited to be talking to you all today. Like Amy said, I am going to get into the nuts and bolts of the implementation process, what it looks like to roll out Snapshot at your schools and in your districts, and then also how you can use our online admin portal and our knowledge base full of resources to really facilitate the experience for students. So I will be talking quickly. I do want to make sure I get through as much as possible, but you will have the recording, and I do want you to continue to add any questions to the Padlet or the chat box that come up. So let's start with some areas that require some advanced preparation, some things to think about as you plan for your rollout. The first thing that we'll need from every school is our readiness form. This form can be found at youscience.com/ready. So that's something to maybe pull up in a separate tab, or just keep in mind when you watch that recording and you're getting ready to get everything started. We need that form so we can make sure that your account is updated behind the scenes, so to speak. We want to make sure you have admin access, and any other staff member in the building has admin access if they need it as well. The form also lets us know when you plan to get started so that our support team can be ready to help you out if any questions do come up throughout the implementation process. So that readiness form is really important. The other thing that we suggest and highly encourage is that YouScience snapshot point of contact at the school. That might be you, might be a colleague of yours. We call them the ambassador. That's really the point person that we would be able to reach out to if we need to. We highly encourage that person to take snapshot, and we encourage all of you actually to take snapshot as well if you haven't already done so, just to get a real sense of what those brain games look like and what the full results profile looks like for you as well. That's going to help you as you set that expectation for students and as you start to get them really excited about what they're going to get out of snapshot. We do encourage you to book some computer lab time or maybe some classroom time in advance before your rollout. So the entire, we typically recommend about a little less than 90 minutes for that implementation. And that 90 minutes includes a results walkthrough session. So it takes students a little less than an hour to complete all of their brain games. That's 5 aptitude brain games and then the interest profile at the end. However, all of those brain games are short. They're about 5 to 8 minutes long, and you can chunk the assessment. You can give it to students, on different days and different class periods. So you can break that up over the course of a couple of days. The important thing to remember with that is that students should log out in between those brain games instead of directly in the middle of one of them. So that takes a little bit less than an hour. And then the results walkthrough session usually takes at least 20 minutes. And it's really important to make sure you're setting up either a one-on-one session with students or a large or small group walkthrough, just so you can make sure you're facilitating those discussions, answering questions students have, explaining some of the aptitudes. They're definitely going to need some guidance as they start to explore those results. So the walkthrough is really crucial. We have a technical requirements document that we recommend submitting to your IT department before you get the ball rolling. This just makes sure that students can access our website at school. Of course, if students will be taking snapshot virtually, that document is not as important, but it is important to make sure that they have a computer to take their brain games on. So that can be a laptop, a desktop, it can be a Chromebook, but the brain games cannot be taken on a tablet or a mobile phone. And then finally, if students have access to the most recent Google Chrome browser, that is just going to be the best browser for them to use.
Alex,
Now another, yeah.
Alex, the question in the chat was, are the brain games based on time speed?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, the brain games are timed, exactly. Yes, and so some of them measure accuracy, or they all measure accuracy, but they also measure speed as well. So students will finish the brain games at various different times, but because they're timed, they're not going to be that far off from each other. So it's still going to take the majority of your students around 55 minutes to complete everything. Now, it's important to, Amy mentioned, the different brain games, we all have different strengths. I think such a key part of setting up Snapshot for students is to make sure you have some of your own results that you can pull up and show them first, and talk a little bit about your experience with the brain games. For example, for me, for spatial visualization, that is not how my brain works at all. I really struggle to look at a 2D object and picture that in 3D in my mind. It's not a gift of mine, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I was still in the classroom and implementing Snapshot, that's something I want to share with my students so they know they're not meant to breeze through every one of those brain games. In fact, some of them might be challenging for them, and that's absolutely okay because we all have our own strengths and then areas where we're not as confident. Now, a big piece of the rollout is creating buy-in, not only with students and with faculty members, but also with parents and the greater community as well. And there are a couple of ways to do this, but some of the best practices and the things that we've seen work really well for other districts is one, to get as many faculty members as possible to take Snapshot for themselves if they want to, just to see how awesome it is and just to be able to have those conversations with students about their own results. You can send out that link at the top of the screen there, youscience.com/request, and staff members can fill out that form. It comes to our support team, and our support team sends out an invitation to take those brain games, typically within a business day or so. We also have some templates, and I'll pull up the page where you can find these templates. You can send an email blast to parents and guardians about a week prior to kickoff. Make sure that they know their students will be taking Snapshot so they can have those conversations at home as well, and that they can expect their students to be talking about it. You can possibly introduce Snapshot at a parent night, promote it on your social media channels, or make announcements about it over the PA system. Whatever you can do to build that excitement and anticipation with students so that they get really pumped up about taking it. Now, speaking of those templates, especially for social media messages, emails, call out messages, we do have a website where you can find all of these great communication tools. It's right there in the top left, right under the title. It's youscience.com/school tools. So on that webpage, you can find digital implementation resources if you will be getting some of your students or all of them started virtually. You can also find, social media templates, email templates, a flyer, just anything you might need to spread the word about Snapshot and make parents in the community aware of it. I do see a question here about parents. Can they take a sample test? They are able to purchase, they can purchase Summit. They can purchase the high school version online. We do have that available. It's $29, but we don't actually, we allow any staff member in the district to take it, but that's not something that we specifically offer to parents. Of course, we encourage them to sit down with students and go over those results together. We have a specific parent page as well, and I highly recommend sending out a link to that parent page when you communicate with them. That parent page contains frequently asked questions and also conversation starters. We know, especially if students are completing Snapshot at home, having that parent engagement is key because, again, they need some guidance as they start to explore those results. Now, when it comes to completing everything and getting everything done, having students finish all of their brain games, you have some flexibility here. You have some options. Again, it takes a little less than an hour for students to get everything completed. So your first option is to have all students take Snapshot in a single sitting. Now that works well if maybe you're on a block schedule or if one day you have a modified testing schedule. But again, that takes a little less than an hour. I would say this option 2 is probably what I see most frequently across the middle schools I work with. And that's if you break up those brain games over the course of 2 to 3 class periods, especially if your class periods are less than 45 or 50 minutes. And again, just make sure students are logging out in between those brain games. If they do log out in the middle of one, that's not a huge deal, but they have to restart it when they log back in. And we just want to prevent that from happening. The third option, of course, is to have that digital rollout to share information with students about Snapshot and make sure they have their login directions, or to have them start with their brain games at school with you and then have them complete those brain games at home. If you do go that route, just make sure to give students a concrete defined due date to have it done by. Now, we do have some best practices for our students with learning differences. We don't offer accommodations for Snapshot by design. We want to get that true picture of the student's abilities in the workplace where they likely will not have those accommodations. But we do have a couple of best practices here for students with learning differences. And I also, of course, want to say, you know your students best, so you know who Snapshot may or may not be appropriate for, but it's typically best for students that can handle, typical middle school level work at any level. So the first option here is to have students break up the assessment over an extended period of time. So maybe 1 to 2 exercises per day. That helps minimize their fatigue and that information overload. You can read the instructions for each exercise individually out loud or maybe in a proctored environment. We also have read aloud directions in our knowledge base if you'd like to utilize those. Students will go through a series of practice questions before they actually start on each brain game. So that's a good time to check in with them, make sure they understand what is expected and how to complete the questions in that brain game. And then if possible, other methods to minimize distractions like using noise canceling headphones is an awesome possibility as well. Now, I do work with multiple districts across the country that use snapshot results to help write student transition plans, especially as they're transitioning into high school and then later to adult life. So I encourage you to think about using some of those components from Snapshot to work on those transition plans for your students. Now, when it comes to reviewing those results, again, you have options here, and this is just based on what works for you, what works for your classes. But I recommend at least 20 minutes or so of a results walkthrough session. In our knowledge base, Amy mentioned we have worksheets, we have lesson plans. You can give students some of this material after they complete Snapshot to complete at home before a group walkthrough, so they can start to process some of their results and read through them, or maybe in lieu of a group walkthrough, depending on what time allows. You can also break out students into small or large groups, maybe have a teacher or a faculty member walk a certain set of students through their results. I really like this option because it does give students a chance to have good conversations about their results and their career cluster matches and get excited about having those discussions. And then your third option, of course, if time allows and if you have the resources, to have some one-on-one sessions with students to discuss with them and advise them. That's a great option, especially if you have students that are maybe choosing CTE courses for high school or choosing electives, other high school courses. They're not sure what they want to go into. Consider using those snapshot results to help them make some of those decisions based on their natural strengths and their interests as well. And we will take a look at our insights tools, which are the summarized reports that you can pull from your admin portal to take a look at each student's best fit clusters from more of an overview, a summary view. All right, so let me double check on those questions before we move on to that admin portal and make sure I'm not missing anything here. Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys for the questions so far. Keep those coming. Let me pull up the admin portal and show you what this looks like. All right, so the admin portal is the place where you'll be able to track student progress, get students started, view all of their results exactly as they would see them, and more. So I do want to kind of walk you through the navigation. This is a lot of information here. It's fairly intuitive and user-friendly, but again, know that there are resources in our knowledge base to give you a refresher if you forget how to do any of this, and then Jim's also going to send out the recording as well. So when you log into this admin portal, and remember, you get access to the portal once you fill out that YouScience readiness form. That kind of lets me know, or lets our support team know, hey, these people need access to the admin portal for this middle school. So once you get your access set up and you log in, you're going to be taken to this main landing page. It's going to welcome you in here, and you have a couple of options here. So you can access your admin dashboard from here. That's probably where you'll go most often. You can also access our knowledge base, which is where you can find resources for your rollout, your results walkthrough sessions, again, those lesson plans, tutorials, more validity information, and just really anything you could possibly be looking for is in our knowledge base. So I'll show you that in just a moment. And then you can also access our insights tool from here, where you can pull those career cluster reports. And we'll take a look at that as well. If you haven't taken Snapshot, you'll have the ability to take it from your admin portal login if you haven't done that. Or once you get your admin login, you may have already completed your brain games, so you'll be able to explore them from this page as well. Now, one important note here to keep in mind, because this is not something that you might know to do when you get your invitation to take Snapshot, but as you're filling out the bio portion, we ask students a couple of quick questions in that bio portion. We ask them for their grade level. So when you're filling it out, it's up to you, of course, but I think it's really important for you all to take snapshots specifically so you can see exactly the brain games your students will be experiencing and what those results look like, as opposed to Summit, the high school and up version. So when you fill out that bio, make sure you select that you're in 7th or 8th grade in order to get the snapshot assessment specifically. So that's a little trick there. You kind of have to pretend to be in 7th or 8th grade. You'll still be able to access your admin portal, no problem, but our system, it serves you up the correct version of the assessment based on your age. Now, I will project that request link that I showed just a moment ago at the end of the training today. So don't worry, that request link is where you're essentially filling out the form to ask for an invitation to take it. So I will project that again, don't worry. So let's go ahead and click on our admin dashboard so you can see what this looks like. So you're going to be taken automatically to this "What do you need to do today" screen. And anytime you need to get a student started or maybe reset their password, because we know our middle schoolers are going to forget their passwords, take a look at their results, check on their progress, this is where you're going to go. Now, if you work with one school specifically, you will just, you won't have this drop-down menu in the top left corner. But if you do work maybe at the district level, or you work with multiple campuses, you'll be able to click on this drop down in the top left and toggle back and forth between the different campuses you have access to. So I'm going to click on our demo middle school, or YouScience middle school as my example here. You have a couple options to choose from on this page. So let me start with this Manage Groups folder really quickly. And when I click on that Manage Groups folder, I'm going to see these groups that I have specifically created for my school account. So you all will have the ability to build your groups however you see fit. I recommend using cohort and grouping by graduation year, just because I think that's easy to transition each year, each academic year. But you can build them in whatever way works for you, advisor, by homeroom, whatever makes sense for your school. The majority of the middle schools I work with and districts I work with do use graduation year here. You can either click on this green button in the top right to create that group, and essentially all you do is name the group, and you can add any group managers. I've mentioned admin portal, admin access. As what we call an admin, you're going to have access to all of the groups in the account, but there might be certain groups that only that staff members might just need access to that one group of students. For example, your 7th grade teachers, they might just need to see, you know, that class of 2026 and no other groups. So you can add them, and I'll click on this blue group settings button just quickly to show you this. You can add them as group managers so that when they log into the admin portal, they don't see all groups, but rather just the one they need access to. Let me go back here. And before we take a look at those groups, I'm going to go all the way back and just start at the beginning for a second, because the first thing you'll need to do when you get admin access is decide how are you going to get your students started. Are you going to hand out activation codes, or are you going to send them email invitations? So it's up to you. Some of you might not have, your students might not have email addresses, and you can absolutely go the activation code route if that's the case. And some of you, it might just be easier to send out email invitations. So from the main screen, regardless of whether you're using codes or email invites, you'll click on this bulk invite students button down here, and you'll download our spreadsheet template. So let me go ahead and show you what this spreadsheet template looks like. And I just ask, when you download this template, don't mess with any of the headers along the top of the screen there, because when you go to upload that completed template, when your students have been added, our system is not going to understand the template if you have changed any of those headers or removed them. So go ahead and leave those as is. If you're using activation codes, what you'll do is the only column here that's required is that group name column. So let's say I'm creating a list of codes for my 8th graders. So if I have my class of 2025, I'll type that in. And actually, let me just go ahead and call this my example group, but you can name it again, whatever you want. And I have my example group. Let's say I need 20 codes for that group. I have 20 8th graders to get started. I'm going to drag the name, that group name, all the way down here so that it fills up 20 of these different rows. And I might just drag it down, give myself a little bit extra. So once I've added that group name all the way down, that indicates to the system that that's the number of codes I need in that group. So I can go ahead and save this spreadsheet, and then I would upload that completed spreadsheet to my account. Now, here's the trick, because I showed you that you can create that group by clicking on the green Create New Group button. However, you don't even have to do that step if you don't want to do that step on the front end. If I upload this template to my admin portal and this example group does not already exist, it's going to ask me, do you want to build this example group? So you can bulk upload this spreadsheet and go ahead and create groups and add invitations at the same time. Now, if you do plan to send email invitations instead, you'll just want to make sure that you do add a student first and last name and the student's email as well. So you don't have to worry about them if you're distributing codes, but you do need to make sure you include this info if you're sending email invites. And the student ID is totally optional. I think most schools choose not to use that, but if you'd like to use it for tracking purposes, you absolutely can. And again, if you added the student names and emails, you would go in here and upload your completed spreadsheet. You'll select that from your computer and click on this upload button. All right, so let me go back for a second. So that's the upload process. Again, we have some videos about that in our knowledge base if you need a refresher at any point. But as long as you download that spreadsheet template and just don't touch those headers, it's a pretty quick, straightforward process. Once your groups have been created, if you ever need to add maybe 1 or 2 students to a group, let's say 2 weeks from now, you upload your roster of 7th graders, but you have a 7th grader transfer in after that. You don't have to go back and upload another spreadsheet. Rather, you can click on Get Students Started here on the left and then Manage Invitations. And for any of your groups, you can click this Invite button in green and just type in the student's name and email address and click Invite again. So you always have the option to add individual students as well. All right, so let's go back to this Manage Groups for one moment. I do want to show you that you have the ability to click this green View Group button for any of your groups of students. There we go. And you'll see some different tabs along the top of the screen there. The Pending Invitations tab is where you'll see a list of your codes or your student names and emails if you're sending out email invitations. So once you upload your student data to the system, our system does not automatically push out those email invites. Rather, we want you to be able to decide when you're going to send out those invitations to students. So when it's time for you to do that, you would view the group and click on that Pending Invitations tab. Click this box next to last name, and then select that Send Invitation Email at the top there and confirm it. So you can send email invites en masse to a whole group, or if you just need to select one student and send the invitation to that one student, you can do that as well. The In Progress tab is exactly like what it sounds. This is where students will be when they're in the middle of their brain games. So I can click on the name of a student here, actually see exactly how many brain games they've taken and how much time they have remaining. I can also reset their password if I need to. And the Results Ready tab is where students will be when they have completed all of their brain games. They have fully checked off Snapshot, and you can click on the name of a student from here as well and click on that blue Impersonate button. The Impersonate button allows you to view a student's results exactly as he or she would view them. So you do have this ability from your admin portal, and it's really helpful if you're setting up those one-on-one guidance sessions with students so you can take a look at their results before you have a conversation with them. Whenever you need to stop impersonating, you'll click that kind of orangey red Stop Impersonating button in the top right. Let me get back to my admin dashboard here. But just know that you do have that ability to view student results. You can also track their progress by downloading the engagement report from here. That's a spreadsheet, shows you all of the students that have started on their brain games and how much time they have left, or if they've completed everything. So if you ever need to sort and manipulate that data, you can pull it from the engagement report. And then finally, you can click on this Manage Organization button if you need to add any additional admins to the account. So once you have admin access, you'll always be able to add other admins or group managers from your portal. And you don't have a limit as to how many you can have on your account. You can have as many as you need to. So that's a quick run through of the admin portal. I want to make sure I have time to show you the resources and the insights as well. From this landing page, I'm going to click on our knowledge base. And this is something I would recommend bookmarking to your browser because I think it's extremely helpful. Every piece, every article, every video we've created, all of our trainings can be found in this knowledge base. So you can access those trainings, webinar recordings from here. You'll typically, most of the time, you'll click on this career guidance YouScience tab here on the left. Just know you can also always use the search bar at the top of the screen to look for any specific lessons that you need or other resources that you need. So once I'm in the career guidance knowledge base folder, I want to scroll down to my school type. So I'm going to scroll down to the middle school resources. And I just briefly want to touch on each of these. I won't open all of them. But there's an implementation planning folder that contains checklists for you and any teachers that might be assisting in the implementation process. There is also that technical requirements document I mentioned earlier. Just everything you need to get started in here, as well as the kickoff materials folder. We have a PowerPoint that you can use to introduce Snapshot to students in there, some videos to get students excited. The results walkthrough materials and lesson plans folder, Amy mentioned them earlier. They can be used in conjunction to plan that results walkthrough session. So we have that worksheet I mentioned for students in here. We also have a short video for them that you can send them or show them in your classroom to get them sort of acquainted with their results and help them start to understand them. The lesson plans folder is going to be that place to make those connections with students, have them start to dive deeper into career clusters and why they may be a good fit for those clusters, have them start to think about their high school courses and more. The communication resources folder contains a link to that school tools page I mentioned earlier where you can find templates to send out to parents and families. It also has an email template in there to send to parents. The additional resources folder is where you can find more information about the science behind YouScience and the validity, also a list of the exercises in order and the time it takes to complete all of them. Any kind of miscellaneous additional articles can be found in there. And then finally, that admin portal tutorials folder is where you'll find just lots of different videos to walk you through much of what I just showed you in the admin portal. So if you ever need a refresher on, how to add a group manager, how to upload student data, how to pull an engagement report and more, I guarantee you can find it in that admin portal tutorials folder. All right, let me just check these questions one more time and then I will show you that. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jim. Let's see. I do want to show you the insights folder and then we can wrap up and make sure I've answered all questions. So I'm going to click on insights from my landing page there. Now keep in mind, if you just have access to one school, that's the only school that will pop up here. But if you do have access to multiple middle schools, they're going to all show up. So from here, you'll click on the name of your middle school and I'm going to use my demo middle school. So I'm not sharing any student data here. From here, you can generate this report. We call it our cluster report. Now the cluster report shows you each of your students' best fit career clusters based on their aptitudes and their interests. Now, of course, that's something you can see on an individual basis from the admin portal, but this just shows you that more summarized view. It's really helpful as you're talking to students about the CTE courses they're going to choose. It's also helpful for you just to get an overall picture of student talent in the building. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to click that blue Generate Report button. Now from here, all of the 16 standard industry clusters are just automatically included. That's the default. But if you want to go through and select just specific clusters to look at, you can do that as well. I'm just going to leave it on the default for now, but just know you can filter by cluster in the future. When you scroll down, you'll get to this demographics section, the demographics information for each student or each school rather. So you can look at the gender, ethnicity, and graduation year of your students. And you can see the summary fit data as well. So you'll see a list of those career clusters here on the left. And what's awesome is I can see the number of students that are a strong aptitude fit for these clusters, a strong interest fit, And I can also look at my aptitude to interest fit ratio. So for example, for agriculture and natural resources in our demo middle school, we have 3 times more students that are a strong aptitude fit for this cluster than a strong interest fit. So that's going to be an area we want to make sure we're exposing students to, especially those that have the talents for it. And we're really highlighting that misalignment there between aptitudes and interests. All of this summary fit data and the demographic data can be exported to a PDF so that you can share that with the district, chambers, other employer partners as well, because it does not contain any student identifiable information. One last thing to show you on this page, if I keep scrolling down, you'll get to the student view and you'll be able to see a list of your students that have completed Snapshot and their top 3 best fit clusters based on aptitudes and based on interest. So you can start to have conversations with students about what their strengths are, what that means in terms of CTE course selection and elective course selection. And you can also export this information to a CSV so you can sort and filter that as needed as well. All right, I see some questions have come through, so let's take a look at some of these. Jennifer, thanks for stating that. I know it is a ton of information and I am sorry I'm going so fast, but this is absolutely going to be recorded and sent out. And don't worry, we have training videos, webinars, other short tutorial videos in that knowledge base as well, so that you can get that refresher that you need, because I know I am speeding through this information in the interest of time. Awesome. Are there any other questions that have come up throughout, anything about the admin portal, the reporting, anything else that I can answer while I'm still on with you guys? All right, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions unless I am missing something on the Padlet.
And checking that, I think it's what we've been doing is actually adding
Those to the chat, maybe.
Comments into it. Brian has an additional one, exploring careers that are not in their aptitude area so that they can drive themselves based on their interest through the program, right?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Brian. They can explore all clusters and all careers within that cluster. So there's no limits to their exploration. Just those clusters that show up at the top are going to be their best matches, but they can certainly explore any they want.
And then we also have a district that students have iPads, so we're going to want to work collaboratively to figure out tech options on that, if you've had that experience with other districts as well.
Yeah, I have had that with a couple other districts. And what I've seen in the past work, they've had additional computer, either labs or additional rolling labs that they've had to make use of. So that's going to be your best bet there. I just, it's important for students to have that mouse, that keyboard, and also the biggest screen that they can. An iPad typically doesn't have a large screen, just so that it doesn't affect the validity of their results if the screen is really small. But just so you'll know, it's a software issue. So just because they have a keyboard or a mouse, that doesn't mean it's going to work on an iPad. It just happens to be a software challenge there. So. Okay.
So last chance for questions. Anybody that has any? Please, looking for faces, hands waving.
Just to add to that, once the student gets their results, they absolutely can use the iPad to explore their results. It's just the computer that they need for taking the exercises. But beyond that, they can even use their cell phones. Actually, if you pull up your results, once you take YouScience, you can pull them up on your own cell phone. It populates very nicely as well there.
And we will discuss this a little bit later and ongoing, but ODE is working with all the project coordinators to create a Google folder system that supports all your work. As resources come up, as questions or answers, these things will continue to populate that. And we'll be additionally using the Oregon Open Learning platform as that resource that you can always reach into from wherever you are for information and support. So continue to put the questions out there because it gives us more to put on our checklist for follow-up. Don't hesitate to do that either in the Padlet or the chat. We're capturing all of those. So a huge thank you to Amy and to Alex from YouScience. Thank you so much for your help with that.
Thank you guys.
And you are invited to stay if you like. You're also invited to, I know you are 3 hours ahead of us, so you're
Yes.
also welcome to go enjoy dinner and the rest of your evening. So thank you for joining us in this time frame. And so we say goodbye to you with a wave and a thank you. And
Thank you.
getting back into our agenda, folks, please, in terms of taking care of self, we're going to keep moving through. We're going to bypass our break because of time constraints. And most likely what we will do is the Oregon Open Learning information is going to be a quick fly through. I'll work on creating a webinar video that can share out to explain that. But your pilot project coordinators are really going to be able to help you work into that area. So if we have time, we'll connect on that today. Most importantly, we want to have our affiliated project coordinators who are going to talk to you about equity move into that conversation right now. So I am going to try to get my screen really quickly connected. So if you need to take a break, if you would take that of your own volition, keep us up and running in the background, listen to what's going on. And I think the first thing I want to acknowledge is that our data expert from ODE, Lauren Dressen, was going to speak with us today, had a conflict come up. And so she created a nice 10-minute video talking about her experience as a middle schooler. I'm going to tell you about it, and then I'm going to share it with the coordinators next week in our gathering. I think there's a really valuable lesson in here. She was, I'm going to use the word traumatized as a middle schooler with her skills as a math student, and was led to believe that she didn't have the talent, the capability to go on and do a career in math. She's the head of data for Oregon Department of Education, Career Technical Education, and also assists with STEM hubs in analyzing data. It's a 10-minute, I got chills thinking about it just now. I listened to it this morning and it like got me all verklempt because I can just imagine an 11, 12-year-old girl listening to this in a classroom and hearing this story in themselves and what she went through in her own journey. She shares it, and it's just a really empowering opportunity to have conversations. And we want to have the same conversation on so many different levels with so many different students about where they're coming from at their place in space. So we're going to share that out with folks, and hopefully you can engage with your faculty. Maybe it's a conversation starter with your faculty, or even just on a personal level as a chance to think about those things. So what do we want the student experience to be? We're going to jump right into, I think Tracy's starting us off. Is that right? With this next conversation? Is it Tracy or Regina who's going to?
It's going to be Regina.
Regina, great. So everyone, please say hello to Regina Child. She's going to start us off on this conversation about what do we want the student experience to be as we move into this work with YouScience.
Jim, are you going to share the slides, the PowerPoint?
Yeah, is that back up? Is my share screen not connected? Let's try it one more time.
No, that's why I was.
It just take me a second. Just take me a second. I thought I hit the button.
No.
Something's not clicking right now. Here we go. I got it now. Thank you. How about now?
Yep.
All right.
Get to see it. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
So the conversational data used with students, Jim, Beth, and the group who first was exposed to youth science, we had a discussion around the data used with students. And what really came up to me, I can actually speak to what almost Lawrence had about data, about my English experience in schools. English was my worst subject in schools in Europe, and here I am. Had to go to college. I was traumatized by similar with my English language learning skills way back. So that's why I have a big heart for kids, specifically around mathematics and with this when we see the data. And what came up to me were these things. Really, mathematics was probably one of the first things I was thinking of if we exclude kids automatically, because maybe the data that shows brings up career fields where they think it has no mathematics involved, and or language skills like for me way back. So these conversations, I think we have to lead them really carefully. And I just would like to hear from all of you too, what comes up from all of you when you see this. So we have here, I don't need to read the bullets up, but we all have our experiences from schools and where we get guided maybe in one way or the other through a test we took, or experiences like Brian said, the interests we had. So and we have the aptitude and industry conversations in the middle and shortly here. But what comes up for you? How are you going to use this this data as you get it? What do you have in mind? And specifically around strength-based versus deficit-based language, how can we bring that up in our conversations? And I just would like to hear from some of you if someone has something in mind as we speak.
Go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to respond, or you could put it in the chat.
Or that, yeah. I'm aware it's almost 5 o'clock. We had a long day. So here's what I want my students to have: a focused approach to future planning. Jennifer, if you don't mind, would you share a little bit more what you mean with focused approach?
So this is Jen here. Basically, I want my students to identify, like we talked about earlier, more than interest, connect their actual skills to careers that are available within the region, and develop that focus and relationships within our community so they can move into those careers in our region. So it's a very practical approach to really getting our students out of poverty.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
I look at this as a way to kind of strengthen the work we've been doing in our district to kind of cultivate a growth mindset, where you can actually link these skills. And so if a student is struggling in a subject, it's not always, their default position is, well, it's because I can't do it, as opposed to, you could practice. There's so many other avenues to achieving success. But it comes to a dead stop when a student has that first, like if they don't do well on their first quiz and all of a sudden their grades in the gradebook with an F, which that's a whole other can of worms, and it just deflates them. And so being able to point out, no, this, and this show that you can be good. And it gives a concrete example of that growth mindset as opposed to just something your teacher tells you.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. Yep. I'm glad this growth mindset conversation emerged several years ago, and I think it changed our language as teachers with our students, and I think that comes really good in play, really has a good place here as well, regards in with a deficit versus strength-based, absolutely. Then another topic we discussed was the implicit bias and stereotypes, and I go back to, we have STEM educators, and we had, how do we funnel or even males into certain careers and into certain areas based on their aptitude test and the interest many times. We confuse the language between interest and aptitude. So what are the implicit biases we carry as an educator or whoever will guide these students around certain careers and jobs? And then, of course, what do results of reports tell us? So really, and limitations of ELL disabilities. And that emerged for me as well. When I listened to this, how do we approach ELL students? They might not be able to express themselves as well as an English language speaker. So we have to really keep that in mind, and also with disabilities, with students who face disabilities. And I was kind of a little bit concerned about the speed of the test. I took the test myself, and some students have delayed response and need to look at something quicker, and then they cannot go through the test as quickly. So those were some concerns that really resonated with me. If we test kids on speed to answer something quickly and they can't finish a test, they might not feel satisfied. So any other questions? So we have also limitations. What limitations? So we have the limitations. What else comes to mind for you around this conversational data use with students? How are you going to approach this, that you train the person who has these conversations around this implicit bias and the test results?
Regina, if I could just jump in for just a second.
Yeah, please.
I'm
Brian.
really hoping that we're going to see, we're going to be looking at our students in a new light. So as an example, many times in a CTE lab, for example, a teacher may see a student excelling in something that that same student doesn't excel in the math class. And even though they're talking about the same subject. So I'm really hoping that the results maybe open the eyes of some people that are interacting with those students, those support networks, and to rethink maybe that implicit bias that we see because students aren't able to demonstrate an aptitude in a certain way.
Thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer, thank you, Brian, for your response. And Jennifer left a response. We haven't taken it yet, the test yet, so it's difficult to respond to the question regarding implicit bias in the instrument. Yeah, that's a valid point. However, it is a logic-based test a little bit. And when I took it, I thought it is very logically based, but we have to keep that in mind. But it also opens up conversations, absolutely, as Brian mentioned, new conversations we can have with students for areas they might not have seen before. Are there any more questions around this? I want to make sure we move on here too. But as you move forward, please keep these things in mind. How you train the people, the conversations we have with the students are very important, and being mindful around how we approach kids around this, and specifically also parents. If parents ask, I know there's also a testing fatigue out there amongst parents. So that's another conversation you might want to, and with students, you might want to consider. Jim, Beth, any other points you wanted to bring out here? Or?
No, this is great, and just super supportive of having this conversation at the front for everybody, like to get our focus on how do we best serve kids in an equitable way.
Can we talk just briefly? I mean, can we talk just briefly about, is it okay to give extra instruction ahead of time? Or I'm just thinking of two things here, because Emma just put a comment in the chat about reading. And then also, Yvonne, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. You and I had an awesome conversation last week about the kind of supports that you provide your students who are learning English. And so if there's anything that you feel that's appropriate to share right now, that'd be great.
Yeah. There are some students that we have in our school that came from Central America, and when they got put in my classes, I would talk to them in Spanish, and sometimes they didn't understand the Spanish that I was speaking, and when they would speak, I wouldn't understand the Spanish that they were speaking, you know, some of the words. And so this being the second year that I have them in class, some of the things I do is, you know, by getting to know them and getting to just talk to them and about their experiences, where they came from, and so forth. You know, I've been able to get to know them a lot better, and a level that I feel comfortable now where, you know, I could provide more help for them, like translating. Like I will translate all the documents, I will translate all the work for them. I make sure that, you know, they are doing the same work that my other students are doing, as opposed to just being like, well, I can just make them do something that's not the same or something that's not the par, and take that easy way out. But I know it's more work, but I think they appreciate it because they feel like they're doing the same thing that their classmates are doing. And so that's some of the stuff that I've been able to do. But a lot of it had to do with just getting to know them. Because like I said, I would give them an assignment or word in Spanish, and they were like, we don't know what that is. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know what that is? It's Spanish, you know. And so I've learned from them as well, and got me to a place to where it's like, okay, you gotta open up your mind and understand that, you know, even though they speak Spanish, it's not the same. And so I've been trying to help them as well, because, you know, they feel like, well, where do I go from here? You know, I'm in school, but what else is there for me? And so I want to help them, show them that there's a lot more that they can do, and they do have a future. Thanks, Carla.
That's important, even, and thank you, Carla, for bringing that up. I mean, even with English words, as we talk about aptitude and interest, you know, are we all clear what we all understand commonly under aptitude here? I want to bring that out because I think that's a big topic, that we all speak the same language when you talk aptitude, and you can look it up, and then you might get various people have various interpretation and definitions around aptitude. So it has been used and maybe not used in the sense how we want to use it here. So I think that's something else that has to be front loaded. But even I really appreciate what you have been saying. Believe me, I run into this all the time with English, and I ask questions and people don't know how to answer me. So I feel. And I think that a test is at this point not available in second language. I think it's only available in English. Is that right, Jim?
Instructions are in, instructions are offered in support of Spanish, but it is not a readable presentation. It's on their immediate to-do list as a tech priority at YouScience. Yes, we've had that conversation with them because it's a.
And there was another thing. Well, my concern was when we translate or explain kids whose English is second language, the results, that we are mindful about how we present it to students with second language and for kids on disabilities, in all regards, for any kid. So, but specifically, is it translated rightfully and not using implicit bias or stereotypes? So specifically around that, so be mindful about all of this. But I want to also be careful with the time. I know it's getting close to 5:10, and we have 20 minutes left. And I know Carla has something to share, and I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Regina, very much. Carla, we will pass it to you.
Okay. This is a great introduction to what we're going to talk about next here, because understanding our words and what we mean and everything is huge. And I think you all in your different regions might have experienced this as you were getting introduced to the idea of, hey, do you want to pilot this program? And even that in itself, what does it mean to pilot this program? What are we going to do? How's this going to work? Is it going to be worth my time? Is it going to be good for my students? If we love it, will we be able to continue with it? And so all those questions, hopefully we're getting those answered for you, and we're going to discover what the rest of that means as we continue on. Would you just give me a show of hands, and keep your hands up? You can either do a virtual hand show or you can raise your hand, but I want to see who has taken the test. It's okay if you have or have not. I just want to know who has. Okay, awesome. And those of you who I can't see your faces, oh, awesome. A virtual hands up would be great.
Or yeses into the chat would be awesome. You bet.
Yeah. I would just love to know who has taken it, who has not, because we're going to talk for just a moment over a few more things. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. All right. So some of you have, some of you have not. Those of you that have taken the test, I need you to interact with us just a little bit and share about your experience. And I would love for you to do it verbally, because as we all continue to talk, it's nice to hear other people talk and not just the same person sharing. Unless you have laryngitis, you're welcome to put your answer in the chat, but I want to hear what you have to say. So if you took the test, what was your reaction during the assessment prior to receiving your results? And I want to hear from you if you took the test.
I'm thinking that I probably took the high school version as I hear the explanation, because there was more than, but I'm not positive. But at times it was very affirming, and at times it was very frustrating. I did it all in a single go, and I definitely wouldn't recommend that for students. But some of them were really fun, and some of them I wanted to throw my computer through the wall.
Okay, who else? If you had your hand raised, you took the test. I want to hear, let's hear one or two more people.
I think I took the high school version as well, and I had the same experience. I think if I'd stopped to think that some of these are going to be easy and some are going to be hard, I wouldn't have felt the stress that I felt, but it is stressful. You want, especially if you want to do something well, there's stress involved.
Thanks, Sherry. Emma, what about you?
Well, I haven't completely finished it, but I've done like 6 or so sections. I haven't, like, after doing the different parts, you don't get results. So you have to finish all of it. At least that's what I'm understanding, to get your results. So it's a little like, I just have to finish it.
All right, we have a couple of comments. Beth took the test, have a couple of, I don't even know what TBI is.
Traumatic brain injuries.
Okay, so you struggle with some parts of the test.
Yep, speed
Okay.
was an issue when I was taking it.
Okay.
Not that I didn't know the information or couldn't get to it. It just was how quick it was going through that I found myself struggling with.
Right. So I think with just knowing that, here we are, we've been talking about this. We shared the opportunity with you. In a lot of cases, you probably got to meet with your coordinator to hear about what this opportunity looked like before you took the test possibly. And even with that, some of you have experienced some frustrations. Let's move on to the next question here. Let's go to the next slide. Those of you that have received your results, would you raise your hand if you've received results? Okay, I want to hear from you if you haven't shared already what your reactions were now that you've received your results.
I'll go quick. I got in the high school version, you get 12 careers to think about. And I had, in my 32 years of being an employee in different industries, 9 of the 12 careers they recommended, I had professional paychecks in those 9 areas. So I ended up luckily kind of going along the path that my aptitudes were designed for.
Tracy, what about you?
Opposite. I actually had aptitudes that were a lot different than the career I'm in currently, but those matched my interests. So a lot different experience.
Anybody else have a reaction? Anybody feel a sense of relief after they saw the results? Anybody feel like, what in the heck is this about? My aptitude does not match my interests. Have I wasted my life?
I definitely had a lot of careers stacked on top of education. I had to go pretty far down. And then it wasn't teaching, it was administration. It was the first education career that popped up, which I'm not technically yet. But I was really, the results themselves, when I read through them and the descriptors, and what I particularly liked was when it talks about how to interact with people or things that might frustrate you in this situation. And I was like, yep, it had me spot on. I was really impressed with, ultimately, more so than I have been for some of the psychological profiles or interest inventories that I've taken in the past.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go on to the next slide.
Sorry.
Please, you're good. All right, with that being said, and I realize not all of you have taken the test yet, and we just got a huge presentation from Amy Bradley around YouScience, all the ins and outs, what the test is good for, how to use it, learning about all the different tools they have available to us, lesson plans, preparatory tools, post-test tools. It sounds like it's stacked with all kinds of information that's going to be helpful. But all at the same time, for those of you that have experienced taking the test already, and those of you that haven't, hearing that there's some frustration potentially in preparing to take the test, some fear, some anxiety, as you get going on the test. I had one educator tell me, oh my gosh, I had to ask my husband for help. I didn't know how to do this part. And I'm thinking, no, you're not supposed to ask your husband for help. It's okay if that part wasn't comfortable for you or it was hard. And so knowing that some parts of the test are not going to be easy for everybody, unless you're a robot and you're good at everything, then what do you know, based on what you know so far, if it wasn't shared already, what do you know that we need to do to help you prepare for your students before they take the test? What kind of ideas do you have? Are you thinking of? And if you want to jump onto the Padlet, you can, it looks like. Or you can put it in the chat, or you can share out loud.
Yeah, I've given a lot of IQ tests, and so which is different, but the point being that you have to tell people, or it's helpful if you tell them that this is designed to help you find the areas that you're really strong in. And so you're going to find areas that you don't do really well, and don't worry about that. Just try to identify the strong areas. So as you hit areas where, you know, you move through it really fast, then you know that's your strength, and that's what we're trying to find out. And then reminding them that it's not based on their knowledge. This isn't telling you like what you know for school. this is just kind of how you lean into the wind.
Right. Right. I think so too.
And I think transparency, Carla, about this test, I mean, really say what you just said, what you experienced, you know, that we all, and that's, I think it's crucial that you take the test prior, you give it to the kids, that you go emotionally through that test and understand. Because I totally agree with what happened to Beth. It's the timing, you know, because we always want to finish. We are so on a finite kind of time frame. I want to finish this test, just to be really transparent about it. And then what Terry said, and also making sure, you know, that might be a talent coming out, but test yourself out in something else as you enter high school. Take a class you might think that doesn't show up as a talent in this test. Maybe it's a talent you haven't considered. So.
Thank you. I think that's all we have for this little section. Let's go on to the next slide. I think we're ready for Brooke if she's here to go next.
And I think Tracy is going to take care of this today. Is that right, Tracy?
I can do that.
All right.
Yes, and really, I guess the big questions you can see on there. First one, rather than walking through the definitions, any aha moments today when you were listening to what we were talking about, thinking about interest and aptitude, what those mean versus using the combination? Did anyone have any really big, like, oh, never really thought about that before? Well, pretty good on understanding those differences and the combinations on it. Okay, I'll just move on. What could intentional career exploration look like in your building? So really, again, a lot of the conversations we've been having and the connections you make with your secondary partner schools and connections with business and industry. So moving beyond the YouScience results, how then do you see using this tool? It's a tool, right? How are we going to use it to make connections, perhaps with our other partners in the community? Anyone had any thoughts that popped in today based on what we were learning?
I'll share. I think Lynn Bailey's gone because she told me she had to leave early, but we've been talking a lot about just their small community and how to kind of revitalize that community. And I think being able to look at just the aptitude and what's coming up through their school system might give that small community a chance to have a positive conversation about what is good about what's coming up in their school districts by looking at the whole of the aggregate of all of their students. And I think they really need that positive connection. That's something that they can do something with. And it can, again, it's like, hey, we have a positive, let's build on that.
Perfect. And I see that Jennifer wrote real pathways for students either in the community or at local schools. So opportunities there. Exactly. I think Regina, shared, why not explore a CTE class, right? Take that opportunity to even make sure we all know what's out there for those students. Is there an opportunity for them to explore? Is there an opportunity for them to job shadow in one of these areas that's identified in the community, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess some of those, and also local schools to the colleges, right? If you have a local college that you might make a connection with as well. Again, in the interest of time, because I know everyone's getting tired today, we'll move on unless Jim or Beth, you wanted to share anything else on this one.
No, I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you to all of our partners for sharing with us today. We are asking you to stick with us for 9 more minutes. We'll cut some things out and provide you with the information in different formats. Beth, is there anything you want to add in terms of data discussion wrap up?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think today is just a start, that we mentioned of this conversation around equity and accessibility and data. And so we've heard a little bit about the why it's important to consider how assessment results, could and should be used effectively with career exploration and decision making. And I think a really good approach and something important for us to take away is knowing that assessment results are one data point out of many other data points that we collect over time. And these different data points help inform students of their opportunities in educational planning, their career exploration, and then in making their life choices or future life choices. So just really quickly, also want to mention that, you know, it's important for us to keep in mind that ethnic, racial, cultural, and varying learning abilities can also lead to differences in interpretation of the assessment questions. So how the students show up, what background they come from, what ability level, that all makes a difference in how they interpret. Also the students, the responses to the questions and how they interpret the results. So interpretation can also vary within groups. So knowing this, it's really important that we address each student as an individual. And that's what I loved what Ivan was speaking to. You know, each student is addressed as an individual, and we kind of work with the individual to help them with their plans and their learning. But we want to try to stay away from the thought around you know, addressing groups of students as a homogeneous group. Not all, you know, we know that there's variance within groups. And then just really lastly, we have an important responsibility as adults, mentor coaches, counselors and guides in our students' lives. And what we believe, what we say, how we say it, and what we do can directly or indirectly impact their students' educational and career journey. So this is just a really opportunity, as you know, was mentioned earlier, for us to foster that confidence in our students and elevate their strengths. And as we move forward with this project, you know, we hope that, you know, we consider to build on the information that students learn about themselves and help them to grow and develop in their confidence and their ability to become their future self. So this is kind of wrapping up this end of the section, and we want to skip part of what we were going to do for an activity, and we'll move into the Oregon Open Learning. So Jim, I'll hand it back to you so we can.
All right, great. And I'm actually going to leave the presentation. Beth, if you'd put the Oregon Open Learning link in there for folks. If you haven't ever been on the Oregon Open Learning website, it is the hub, the state hub for equitable sharing of materials and resources. It is free and open to anyone. I'm going to show you really quick. If you can hit that link and open that up, you should come to a page that looks very much like this. Maybe somebody can give me a thumbs up if some folks are finding it. And maybe just for these, great, thank you very much. That was Elaine, thank you. Maybe these last few minutes, if you could throw your cameras on, just as we're wrapping things up here. This is gonna be, I have a former student who's an F-35 fighter pilot, and so this is gonna be a version of that for you. Up here in the sign in register, I'm already signed in. To create an account, super easy, takes about 30 seconds. And first name, last name, email, password, confirm password, prove that you're not a robot, boom, done. Now, why this? We are going to house all the resources for this entire project on Oregon Open Learning. This is not a short-term fix. This is a long-term investment for the state of Oregon to create a resource and housing site for resources in our state for students. And there is a big push to create free access to textbooks, and we are doing lots of negotiation and lots of build out of curriculum to place in here, and it is going to be high quality, and we're excited that our project is going to be one of the big building blocks in the initiation of this. I'm going to sign in. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to show you really quick. If you get caught up with me there, great. A hub is a state or a large organization that supports curriculum. So Oregon Open Learning is our hub. I'm going to scroll down the page. And yes, we're going to do webinars. We're going to have recorded video tutorials. And yes, especially any administrator or any team lead, if you would like the Oregon Open Learning team to come do a presentation for your school, give me an email, give me a holler. I am on this lead team for Oregon Open Learning. We are going to be housed in the Education Partners and Practices. And as you scroll down, Oregon Middle School Career Exploration, we've got our own group. And in here is where we are going to land all of YouScience lesson plans and all of the lesson plans that we develop as teams in our region. And so very first thing we have in here is the lesson plan template. Not that anybody has to jump into this right now and start using it, but it's an example of how items are going to be stored and shared with one another. quick and easy access. Again, we'll put out some video tutorials on how to get in here. If you get in and you join the group, I was all excited to get my bonus points and see how many people I could get signed up today, but we'll just do that another time. We'll send an email out that has all this information on how to get in and how to get started. But we will create, one of the things we will work with as teams, as a giant group, is to create a file folder system that helps us easily organize all these materials and have quick access to everything. Now, all of this is free to students, to parents, to people in the school system, to our business and industry partners. So it's a great opportunity to share resources. To honor the getting done by 5:30, I'm going to just tell you really quick that we are going to have an email coming out to everybody that's present today. It will also go to anybody, if you're a school ambassador, your pilot project coordinator will work on distributing this out and getting this information spread out to all the participating support teams. We're going to have the YouScience readiness form on there for you. We'll include the links to the snapshot video. We'll include the video on how to walk through results, the link to Oregon Open Learning, and some of the early lesson plans that you can use as a pre-test opportunity, as a taking the test opportunity, and right after you take the test, kind of those walkthrough opportunities and lesson plans. And then, of course, we hope to build those together as a team and put your local efforts and local information in there. We'll also put the links for you in this email to research and the validity of documents. So as you're having conversations, you can have those to look at. We'll include today's PowerPoint. We are also creating ODE office hours where Beth and I will be available on a consistent basis. Anybody in this project can jump into that office hour at any time and ask any question. We will be there consistently on a weekly basis for the next 6 months to support you in this rollout effort. We'll include links to Lauren's story, hoping that you might find a way to incorporate that in your work and in your conversations, especially with your staff, and especially with those teams that are going to start the conversation with young people. And then we have a huge list that we've already generated from today. We have 2 more kickoff sessions to go. So we will get all of those answers generated and to you in a frequently asked question format and get the feedback to you as quickly as possible. So on behalf of Beth, on behalf of the pilot project coordinators, the fiscal managers, all the co-coordinators, and all the team leads that are immediately jumping in, a huge thank you. We're so excited about this opportunity. We're going to stay on the line, Beth and myself and any of the coordinators that has the time, to do some question and answer follow-up. So if you want to linger, we are more than happy to stick around and talk with you. Thank you. We hope it filled your heart a little bit. We know it definitely filled your brain. I got lots of, whoo, look at all the information. So we're happy we at least got that benchmark met. A huge thanks again to our coordinators and all the folks involved. So Beth, chance for you to say goodbye.
Another big thank you. Just to echo what Jim said, and super appreciate you all being on today. And we're happy to answer any questions, and just let us know what we can do to help support you.
So if you're heading out, we thank you again for your time. Please pass the word on the sessions on Saturday and next Monday if you have any teammates that want to jump in there. And a huge thank you again to everybody that presented today. Thank you. We'll stay on for a little while here as people are saying goodbye.